So I wasn't exactly sure if I'd, do a follow up, but I decided in the end to do a follow up because I got out of the high school of doom in Walking Dead Destinies because they patched the game and I didn't think to reset the game during the patch. Someone was kind enough to point that out to me in the video, so I'll show them on the screen. That guy's good guy. He's my new best friend. So I beat the final boss of the original build, and I didn't have any further problems before finishing the whole game. So now that I have a finished game recording on my hard drive, it was a bitch because PS5's recording software is just I don't like the way it works. It's irritating. But yeah, now that I have most of the game recorded, I was like, oh, I'd love to make a curiosity's sake on it, but equally, I don't want to spend that much time scripting and editing a video on this game because this game is, it's Walking Dead Destinies, isn't it? So I thought I'm going to go in broad strokes. I've put some bookmarks on my timeline of the footage, and I'm going to talk about all these little bookmarks and why I found them interesting. You can't see this, so there's not much point in me talking about it in too much depth, but the gist of it is I'm going in broad strokes and just talking about specific details off the mic, off the cuff. So let's do it. So after you escape the gym, you end up in the Otis situation. Now in the show, there's a character called Otis who is the quote-unquote hunter who shot Carl. Otis isn't in the game. He's just referred to as a hunter. He's just a random hunter that showed up, shot Carl, and fucked off. There's like there's no character to him. Anyway, you go to the school with Maggie or Beth, and in this version, Maggie trips and drops the medical bag, and you can't pick both up because, it's Walking Dead Destinies. Everyone in this game is fucking stupid. So you either pick up the bag or pick up Maggie. I decided to pick up Maggie and run off. Now, in the show, this was a different scenario and a different dilemma. Basically, Otis and Shane were injured and basically dragging themselves along, and Shane realized that neither of them were going to make it out alive at this point. So he basically wounded Otis and left him to die so that he could limp off with the medical supplies, and then made up a sort of excuse as to why Otis didn't come back. But obviously people saw like holes in the story because he came back with Otis's gun, which if Otis stood back and sacrificed himself like he said in the story, that kind of puts a hole in it. In this version, though, Shane is kind of a less villainous character because the situation he's put in, he doesn't have to fuck someone over to get away. Not really. Now, on the downside, I did lose the medical supplies, but on the upside, Carl died, so that's great. This is the best possible outcome I can think of. So, yeah, Carl is dead in this universe. I like this universe now. I think this is the best possible universe we could have had. I find it kind of funny that Shane still shaves his head, regardless of choices made, which in the show, if anyone remembers, he shaves his head because Otis ripped a piece of his hair out and he wanted to hide that because, it somehow put a hole in his story. I always thought he could make up a convenient lie, like a zombie grabbed his hair or something. I don't know, but yeah, he shaved his head just to cover his tracks. It makes no sense why he shaved his head in the game. I guess he just needed a trim. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. There's then a conflict, which I don't know if I covered the conflict in the last video, but the conflicts basically are where two characters have an argument and you press L2 or R2 to side with one. In a zombie game, I kind of like this because this would be a realistic thing that happens. The problem that I have with it, though, is that the conflicts have no impact on anything. You get a reward regardless of who you side with, and there's no like relationships or anything in the game. Like it's not like Mass Effect, where you had those conflicts where a character wouldn't speak to you again if you didn't side with them. It's more akin to just Coke or Pepsi, and it doesn't affect anything at all. Oh, by the way, Laurie's pregnant. I love how it just drops that on in in, in text. Sorry, it just like, yeah. By the way, Laurie's up the duff. Might want to take care of that. And then it does the flashback to the bit where Shane rescues Rick from the hospital. This part of the game has probably my least interest because it's so pointless. In the show, it was conveyed perfectly because it showed you the only part of this entire scenario that matters. Shane reaching Rick, he can't save Rick, so he leaves him behind, but he does everything he can to make sure that Rick doesn't get torn apart by monsters. It works. It says a lot about Shane's character at that point in time and how much he tried and how much he cared. Whereas in this game, you have to fight your way up to the top, find Rick, fight your way back down to the bottom, fighting soldiers. The AI in this game are legendarily thick. Like, the zombie AI is somehow smarter than the human AI because the human AI is just really fucking dumb. Honestly, I think the day that the zombies win and take over everything is the day that the average IQ goes up. So the next part of the game is the bit where the barn is broken open and all the zombies get out. And basically, they decide that they just have it so that Glenn discovers that the barn is full of zombies. And then Shane immediately says, we're just going to kill the zombies. And then, like, that's about it. But they don't really go over in any detail, even like the most base detail. Not even a single line of dialogue is established to say the reason why the zombies are in the barn is because they're Herschel's family and he believes that they're still alive on some level and can be cured. Whereas Shane's like, no, that's fucking stupid. These things are going to kill us. We need to kill them first. There's a debate around that and a moral aspect, which wasn't actually in the book. In the book, the barn just bursts open and the zombies attack everyone. And Herschel has like a really big family in the book, and that kind of just acts as the whole family. He reduces it down to like 3 family members or so. Whereas, which actually honestly would have worked fine for this game if they had just done it like the book. But instead, they make it so that Shane immediately breaks it open and kills the zombies, which I find kind of funny. Because Herschel barely even protests because he has no reason to. He just kept them there for aesthetic in this universe. But yeah, you play as Merle in this part if you saved Merle, and Merle runs around trying to find his fire axe, which he left in a shed and then barricaded it with a bunch of crates. So you have to do like some weird box puzzle in order to get the fire axe. This was my favorite part of the show, where T-Dog decides to just barricade his only weapon inside the goddamn shed under like 50 odd dumpster sized crates, which are on wheels that he has to push out. There's also zombies everywhere, which isn't a problem apparently. This is kind of normal. Despite the fact that the whole point in the farm is the fact that there are very rarely zombies that appear. Like, there's like 1 or 2 that show up at the farm per episode. And that's why they stay at the farm, because the farm is so remote that the zombies don't find it for ages. But no, in the game, there's just zombies on the farm, and that's fine. Anyway, you break the barn open, and unlike the show, you have to basically have like a massive endurance round to fight them all off. I kind of get why, because it's a video game, but it is a bit silly that there's this many zombos in the barn. Like, Jesus Christ, it's like a clown car by the end of it. Then you get the whole Sophia thing, where she comes out the barn and Rick shoots her like in the show. There's no choice aspect there, but I do kind of appreciate that that happens regardless. Immediately after this, they skip the whole Randall plot, and they skip a bunch of other stuff. One of the Season 2 plots, for some reason, happens in Season 3, which I don't quite fully understand, but I kind of do at the same time. I get it on some level, but I also don't. So, anyway, Rick and Shane have a standoff, and you get to decide who kills who. Unlike in the show, where it's a very quick thing, and they just, like, Rick just stabs Shane. In this version, you have a massive boss fight where Rick has like a full health bar and runs around, and you have to like there's an objective, kill your friend, which I find hilarious. And there's like even these moments where characters appear like in the corner on like little portraits, like they're radioing in to give you support or to talk about how bad the situation is or how they need protecting, so that you'll be motivated to kill Rick. And I find it kind of funny that one of those characters was Carl, and Carl's fucking dead. I don't know if that's like a mistake or intentional, but it's hilarious nonetheless. Anyway, you eventually get the scene where Rick gets shanked and then gets shot in the head. Then he goes back and the farm is being attacked by zombos. Herschel tries to do his infinite ammo shtick. By the way, I'm very disappointed that Herschel doesn't have an infinite ammo perk at the end of his tree. Shane is like, no, dude, we're just going, go away. Shane also saves Dale. I don't know if Dale dies here under Rick, but it could be, I don't know. So they drive away and they go to the prison, and season 3 basically starts. So season 3, Shane is kind of funny because he's wearing Rick's clothes, has Rick's hair, and has Rick's beard, but it's Shane's character model. It's a very weird and uncanny image, I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of creepy, to be honest. It's like he wants to become Rick. So you find the prison and you do the whole, we go in hand to hand thing like in the show. So the next big thing that happens, I'm just skipping ahead a little on my timeline. You play as Carol. Now in the show, it's a team effort. And everyone kind of learns something, and everyone has to like, it's the biggest fight they've done thus far against the zombies. They have to clear out like, honestly, I think like 100 of them just to get inside the prison, and you start to realize that these are no longer, these characters are now professional survivors at this point in the story. Whereas in the game, it's just Carol. They just send Carol in there, you know, the domestic abuse victim who at this point in the story has just lost her daughter and husband. She goes in single-handedly. It's not season 5 Carol, it's just early season 3 Carol. And they just send her in with a pistol and they're just like, good luck, Carol. So she shoots the place up. This is actually the first time I died in the game because I ran out of ammo and then realized I had to take on a bunch of melee grenade zombies. Sorry, grenade zombies with a melee weapon. I don't know why I said melee grenade zombies. That's retarded. Put that on a t-shirt or something. I don't know. So I ran up to them with a machete and hit them and they blew up. To be fair, I wasn't expecting much else, but I thought maybe if they died and I had a moment to get away, that would have been cool, but sadly, no. Anyway, you eventually get deeper into the prison and you find Andrew. Andrew is the only convict in the game. None of the other characters, such as Tomas or Axel, appear in the game, which kind of sucks because I like Axel. Andrew is literally the only prison survivor in the game, and basically I told him to fuck off because Andrew is like the absolute worst. Admittedly, I was expecting the other survivors to turn up, like Big Tiny and all them, but they don't. So I sent him away because I thought that was quite in character for Shane, and it results in, Andrew basically coming back and doing the whole, what was that episode called? It's named after one of the book parts, but I can't remember. Fuck it, I'll remember 2 weeks from now. So anyway, the next part is they send Herschel into the tombs to fight the zombies by himself, because of course, you do that. Anyway, then we get to the bit where Herschel gets bit. In the book, it was Alan, but originally it was meant to be Herschel in the book, but Robert Kirkman felt bad for the dude because he just lost like half his family in the volume before, so they did it to Alan. Um, and in this version, Shane basically just leaves Herschel to die, and doesn't even try to save him because he's already bit, which I kind of like, actually. I like that the decision to make Shane the leader of the group actually results in the like this situation being locked, because Shane's the leader. Shane would never think to chop his leg off. Shane would never try to save a bite victim because he wouldn't deem it as worth it. So he just leaves him to die, and he just like gets fucked up by zombies. That's kind of Shane's thing. And then you get... Oh, that's the other thing as well. Herschel's walk animation. He only has one, and it's implied that he has his peg leg from season 4 at the beginning of season 3, which is kind of amusing to me. He just sort of hobbles his way through. Anyway, then we get Andrew looking a bit sinister, who sets off the prison alarm like in the show. I don't know what happens if you let Andrew stay with you. If I ever do another playthrough, I'll do that, and you won't care by that point because it'll be like a year from now. So, yeah, you do the whole Andrew thing. There's an Andrew boss fight in the generator room where you have to stop the generators and then kill Andrew in an epic boss fight, which is hilariously ridiculous. Laurie dies during the pregnancy, which I found kind of accurate. I don't know if you can save Laurie in this one. So now I've lost both Laurie and Carl. This is working out fucking great. I also have Dale in the group, who wasn't alive at this point in the show, but he was alive in the book. So that's good. At least we're more accurate to the book at this point. So then I lost a lot of the footage because the game crashed. I take back what I said about this game being very stable. Nah, to be fair, like, crashes happen even on the most stable of games. But I got to the bit where Michonne is introduced. Now, Andrea isn't in the game, so Michonne is basically Andrea and Michonne in this version of the game, which I find a bit silly because Andrea and Michonne are meant to be polar opposites. Andrea's trusting, Michonne is mistrusting. Andrea wants to believe that Woodbury is real, and Michonne wants to believe that it's not. Whereas now Michonne comes across as being borderline schizophrenic because she has two motivations. So she has to chop her way through this department store, and then she turns up at the prison, and Shane basically saves her so that he can interrogate her. Then you do the Walk With Me chapter. Now, out of all the parts in the story that they just sort of gloss over, I do kind of find it funny that they do the whole Walk With Me segment to show you the whole of Woodbury, despite the fact that you never really... You go back there a couple of times in missions, but it's not like in the show where they try to make it work or anything. The first mission is a stealth mission, which basically skips the story to, like, season 3's midpoint. So this is pointless. I like, though, that Michonne walks around holding her sword, but not holding her sword. She's got the animation for it, but she's clearly not holding the sword, but is meant to be holding the sword. So, yeah, I could just picture the perfect music to play over this ridiculous walk cycle, which looked so natural.
I like your strut. Do you wanna go strutting, strutting? You like my strut? Then let's go strutting. I like your strut. Do you wanna go strutting, strutting? You like my strut? Then let's go strutting right now.
One thing that I found kind of amusing is that this is where T-Dog is reintroduced, and you find that he's got his little hook hand and he looks like a pirate, which I kind of like. One thing that I found kind of amusing is that he only has one eye, which I thought was part of his character, but it's not. It's actually a visual glitch and a fuck up, because this is a variant on his skin from where he can lose his eye based on a decision. And I found this out later on because, well, I cut his eye out. I then did a sneak mission. I kind of fucked it up and died. That one's on me. That one is my fault entirely. I just sort of ran past the zombies and then fucked myself over by doing so. I don't have much patience for stealth, I'm afraid. Then I find a kind of funny visual / world building failure where I'm on a metallic gang walk, but for some reason there's green foliage and bushes growing out of the metal. I don't know who thought this was a good idea, but it's a terrible idea that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it makes the game easier, but equally, it doesn't make any sense. I'm just glad that this freak bush happened to be there. So then we get to like the funniest part in the game for me, where you find Philip's daughter, the governor's daughter, is locked inside, and she's a zombo with a hood over her head, and she's chained up like a mental patient. And Michonne removes her hood and is looking at her in the face, and then Philip bursts in and he's all like, "No, don't hurt my little girl." And basically at this point you have a choice between killing the little girl or not. Killing the little girl?
Scaring the little girl?
So I decided not to kill her because I've been trying to do the opposite of what they do in the show. This actually was the best decision I made in the game because it creates a bizarre turn of events. So Philip isn't a villain in this game. He's actually starts off as a good character who becomes evil because of your choices. In the show, it's established that he basically has murdered a lot of people. The walker heads in the tank are people he's murdered and put in the tank and basically kept them in a state of living death to be miserable forever. Whereas in this version, it's like, well, he just keeps them, I guess, because he's the good guy. And basically, at this point, this is where he becomes Philip or the governor. I decided to spare the daughter, as I said, which results in a hilarious situation where Philip explains himself only to be interrupted by T-Dog bursting into the room, shoving him into a thing and knocking his head, shouting, "What the fuck is this shit?" And then he pulls out a gun and shoots the child in the face. And it's just like the sheer ineptitude of it is so funny. I love it. This also makes the situation where basically T-Dog overthrows, he usurps Woodbury and becomes the governor. So now he's Merle and the governor at the same time. And it is Christmas for me. This is the best universe. I could not picture a better universe than this. This is amazing. I also recruit Philip as my character, and he's running around Woodbury trying to escape. Apparently, T-Dog is linked to the Woodbury security hive mind, and he's now told everyone that he's the new governor and the other governor's a traitor. Apparently, because he kept a zombie child in his cupboard, this makes him this nullifies his claim to office. It's like it impeaches him, basically. It's like in the Constitution, you know, there's certain things the president can be impeached for. Well, turns out Governor Woodbury, if he happens to have a child zombie in his cupboard, he gets impeached. So that's basically that. So you go on the run as Philip. I don't understand how his daughter dies regardless, but he still has two different outcomes despite the fact that his daughter dies regardless. It doesn't make a huge lot of sense to me, but whatever. Anyway, you play as Philip once for the entire game, and this is it. So soak it up. This is Philip running around shooting people and being a badass. Then, from what I can tell or remember, you basically end up with the Suicide Kings and that segment of the game happening. Now, I don't know if I have the footage of that. I swear I did at some point, but I don't know what the fuck. I'll see if I can find it before the upload, but the gist of it is it turns into a one-on-one fighter, and you have to kick Philip into the zombies, and Philip tries to murder you as Daryl. And basically, you have to keep kicking him into the zombies to basically minorly inconvenience him. Now, they don't explain it. In the show, the zombies in the arena are neutered. They've had all their teeth removed so they can't harm anyone. But the actor being snagged on them apparently causes problems for Philip. So anyway, then T-Dog gives him a gun and gives him the ability to shoot Daryl. And Daryl still beats him up. And I then had a finish him moment where I was supposed to perform some sort of fatality move, but the game kind of fucked up. So I had to reset the whole game. Because of course I did. I had to restart that part of the game and redo the entire boss fight just to finish him. So I did. And then the two of them ran away. I kind of like that Philip gets to come even though he tried to murder Daryl. I find that kind of funny. Immediately after that, which is like the midpoint of Season 3, it just skips to Season 4. And I find it kind of amusing that you start off with the swine flu epidemic. Now, I thought swine flu epidemic might turn out differently because one of the major reasons that the swine flu epidemic is contained and what have you is Herschel. Herschel is like the most important character in that arc because he is the doctor trying to fight the storm. He's keeping the tide back, as it were. And I thought with Herschel dead, maybe this will result in a lot of character deaths because, well, Glenn gets sick in the show, so maybe Glenn doesn't make it because Herschel gives him CPR at one point, as does Maggie. It turns out, no, we didn't need Herschel or Maggie. It turns out it was just Daryl who got sick and some random characters who just appear after the Suicide King who don't have names or anything. That's the other thing as well. It can't decide if we took in Woodbury's survivors or not. So they appear in one mission, but then you never hear about them again, which is kind of hilarious. They're not in the siege at the end of Season 4. They're not in any other part of the game. They're just, well, in one part of the game where you have to save them during the epidemic, and they're apparently the zombies that fell to the swine flu. So yeah, after that, you go to a department store to find meds to cure everyone of the swine flu. Turns out that this was where T-Dog decides to get his revenge and he kidnaps Glenn and Michonne. So that's quite funny. Daryl's sick with the swine flu, which he wasn't in the show. Glenn was, but I don't know if that changes based on decisions, but I don't know. Anyway, this is where they decide to do the episode Clear from Season 3. I don't quite get why, but Shane's like, oh no, everyone's dying of swine flu. Well, fuck, better go back and, get some weapons. We're gonna need weapons to fight the swine flu. So he goes to back to Atlanta. This is where he, quote-unquote, reunites with Morgan. He hasn't met Morgan. It's weird because this starts as episode 1, Days Gone By. For some reason, it opens up with that title. So I think that they used the same map and then forgot to change that detailing. It's kind of interesting that Shane meets Morgan and talks to him. And I like this as a thing. It's one of the instances where the situation completely changes because what was a reunion is now just Shane going back, meeting Morgan, finding out that Morgan knew Rick, and being all like, yeah, Rick's dead. Don't know how that happened. He did. And Morgan is kind of reasonable about it. He doesn't seem to... Because in the show, Morgan has completely lost his shit, and Rick is the one that brings him back because he knows Rick, and because he recognizes Rick, and he's able to break through to him. Whereas any stranger he met, he tries to kill. In the game, Morgan's just being an asshole, His mental illness isn't very apparent. He's just shooting at people for no real reason. He doesn't mention his son. It's one of the many things, along with Glenn and Maggie's relationship, which just doesn't exist in the game. His son doesn't exist. He mentions his wife in passing, and apparently he's throwing a strop because he didn't have the strength to shoot his wife. And he's now shooting everyone who comes anywhere near him. I don't get it. I think they fucked this part of the game up a bit. So Shane asks him for some guns. He gives him the guns, and then he fucks off. I would have thought that Shane would have killed him for the guns. Because, well, why would Shane spare him? He's an obstacle. Like, if he's willing to let Herschel die and let Maggie die, potentially, why the fuck would he, like, and he killed his best friend. Why would he have a problem killing this crazy guy with a gun on a rooftop? I don't know. But whatever, anyway. Anyway, characters get kidnapped. And then you end up sort of planning for your next move. Hold on a sec. Sorry, I'm just looking for the next bits. So then you find out that basically a T-Dog has turned up with a tank. I don't know how, I don't know why. He's turned up with a tank and an army of zombies. I do love this shot just before where it shows you all the characters in your group. Most of them at least anyway. Brian's not in the shot and a few others. But yeah, me and the boys here, we've got Merle, who's now got a beard and hair. He looks more like Aaron. We've got Dale. We've got Carol, we've got Beth, Maggie, and Daryl. Quite frankly, I think that's a pretty good team. And we've got Brian somewhere. He's just around. I don't know. Anyway, T-Dog turns up at the gate on his tank with his hook hand and his one eye. I love this version of T-Dog. I think he's fucking amazing. He even just goes, haha. Which I love. So him and the boys turn up on a tank and basically attack the prison and tell you to fuck off. He uses the same dialogue from the season 4 episode where Rick tries to appeal to the governor and the governor opens up with it. For some reason, Glenn has Rick's lines in this. I don't know if that's true if Rick survives, but Glenn is the one that tries to appeal to. Admittedly, both Michonne and Glenn, you have a choice between which one tries to appeal. And he basically kills... Sorry, I said basically twice there, I apologize. He kills whoever tries to appeal to him because, well, he's T-Dog, he's a badass, he doesn't need to listen to your pussy-ass pacifist shit. So he murders Glenn with a katana, and decapitates him, and then Shane just loses his shit and starts shooting. I kind of like that, that's pretty cool. Then T-Dog busts the gate down. Now, I did get a lot of cutscenes at this point in the game, and I do wonder if, when I said that there weren't cutscenes in the game, I wonder if they just weren't playing, and another patch has fixed it. Someone suggested that to me, and I don't know. And I don't care enough to waste another 4 hours of my life immediately after to find that out. 4 hours at least, just to get to this point in the game again. I'd rather not. I'm sorry. I do try to be thorough, but I'm not wasting another 6 to 8 hours playing Walking Dead Destinies on a week where I kind of just want to do other things of note. So anyway, T-Dog busts the gate down. You have like an epic battle against soldiers and zombos, and it's like insane. It's basically the mid-season 4 finale. You then play as Daryl and throw a grenade into the tank. The tank explodes and T-Dog jumps out of it. And then him and Shane have like an epic duel in the middle of a ring of fire, which is probably the best way you could ever end anything, is T-Dog and Shane having a fight in the middle of a ring of fire with a katana and a hand hook. That is so fucking cool. Shane then fucking murders T-Dog because, well, you know, T-Dog, is too dangerous to live. You then have to snipe a bunch of zombos in a field and protect not Rick. I find it funny that Rick is clearly the character in the cutscene because they didn't think or couldn't be asked to remake him into Shane with the same cutscene and just redo it with Shane's character model. So they just do it really far away with Rick and just hope that you didn't notice. But I noticed. You then have to shoot into a wall of fire, not being able to see a single thing, and basically pick the zombies off whenever their vague silhouettes appear and just hope that it's not Shane or Daryl. I personally didn't care, so I just emptied my gun into the fire and just hoped for the best, and it turned out okay. Then you fight a lot of zombies on the way through the prison. There's a new zombie basically saved for the end, where he's in armor, but he's also one of those super tough zombies, which is a pretty cool idea for a game with special infected. But again, I would have liked, you know, real special infected over this pathetic pussy ass having your own cake and fucking it as well approach. Like, yeah, you've already stuck your dick in the cake. You might as well go all the way. So, after this, you you get out the prison, and it does like a slideshow epilogue, which admittedly is more than a lot of games give us, where it shows us who escaped and how they escaped. So Carol ran off with Judith, who everyone seems to forget in the game. Michonne just walks out the gate. Brian takes the school bus with Philip. In the show, he's Philip. In the book, he's Brian, who takes the name Philip after his dead brother. In the show, it's the reverse. My bad. I keep calling him Brian because he's Brian. So Philip takes the bus, and with Dale, and him and Dale survive together, which honestly, if that should just be a spin-off game on its own. David Morrissey and Dale just going on an adventure, fighting zombies on the road. I think that would be a cool fucking story, but then again, I jump to conclusions on that stuff a lot. Beth and Maggie apparently survive. They run off with Daryl. And then Shane just sort of hobbles off. He's like, "Don't look back. Don't look back." Like, it's meant to reflect the season 4 finale where... the mid-season finale, which is better than the actual finale, to be honest. Where basically Shane, Rick and Carl are hobbling off, and Rick's like, "Don't look back, Carl, don't look back." And he does it in the book as well, but it's less emotional here, partly because the delivery implies that he's just trying to wing it and pretend that he's not fucked up royally. And he's like, "Okay, boys, don't look back. We didn't fuck up, guys. It's okay."
Don't look back. Just keep walking.
And that's basically the end of the game. It ends on the mid-season 4 finale, which I think is a fine place to end it, to be honest. Because otherwise, I don't know where else you'd end it. Maybe at Alexandria, but I don't know. Anyway, it makes sense to end it here. And then that's the end of the game. So yes, Walking Dead Destinies. It is ugly. It is a bit of a shit show of a game, but I have to admit, I had a lot of fun with it. I'm not going to lie, I had some fun. Partly with the ineptitude, partly with just seeing where it went and what impact the decisions had. I kind of like how the decisions in this game actually have impacted more than I thought. I legitimately was just expecting a few texture changes and stuff like that. I'm not going to lie, I think some AAA studios have not managed to make a game based around choice, which have an impact of this scale. Like, yeah, the story is always the same no matter what, but whole character arcs and things happen based on which decisions and choices you make. And I kind of like that. I think it's cool. And I would like to replay this again at some point to see what happens if Rick survives and if this, and this. Yeah, I'd really like to see that. I'd like to see if I could have a one-hand T-Dog and Merle on the same team. That would be a fucking awesome treat. But I guess we'll see. Yeah, so that's one thing. I could also turn Merle into the governor. That's another thing that would be fucking awesome. Um, but yeah, the whole game as a whole, admittedly, it's not the worst thing I've spent full price on. Like, admittedly, I had more fun with this than Tekken 7, which is funny because Tekken 7 is a more competent game, allegedly. But this was less of a disappointment somehow. But at the same time, yeah, I wouldn't actually recommend this, especially not at full price. If you can get it in the sale for $10 or less, I think some people might have fun with this. But honestly, I would not recommend this at full price, especially not in the state that it's in, where there's a lot of game-breaking glitches and bugs. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who's actually looking for a legitimately good game. If you are, I'd highly recommend Baldur's Gate 3. That game is fucking amazing. It's only like $10-20 more than this, and it's longer, has way better characters and acting. It's an RPG where you can do almost anything, and the story actually is impacted by your decisions a lot like this, but you actually give a shit about any of it. Um, but yeah, Walking Dead Destinies, I know has been compared already to Golem and Skull Island. I have to admit, this out of the three of those games, this is the one that I think is the least awful because I feel like it has something going for it on some weird level. And I know some people know that I watched the show back in the day and I really liked it. I was like the kind of guy who would be eagerly excited for the next premiere, and then by the time season 6 came along, I just sort of put it on the back burner and watched it in bulk later, and then I went whole years without watching it, and then just binged an entire season or two to catch up for the next season. But yeah, if anyone thinks that this is me being loyal or something like that to the series, no, that any chance of that, which honestly I don't think there ever was a chance of that. I would never have backed a game for being shit that's a Walking Dead game. Just look at the survival instinct, because it's Walking Dead. But in saying that, I do kind of find that this game has some merit in some weird way, and its ineptitude is more amusing to me than irritating or disgusting. I feel like someone said that the publisher does not give the developers the budget to make a game on the scale that they want to make it. And to be honest, I can see that. That is what this game feels like to me. I don't think necessarily it's a lack of effort. I think it's a lack of talent and resources from my personal take on it. I don't know one way or the other, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's that. I feel like there's a bit too much. It feels a bit too earnest to be one of those things where it's just like, oh yeah, well, shit munchers will just buy anything, just, whatever. I don't think it's like that. I think the game is it was just doomed from the get-go, and I don't know anyone who actually expected anything good from this. If you did, I'm sorry, but what the fuck were you thinking? Did you see the original trailers and art? Like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, final thoughts on this game. It's an amusing mess that I would recommend to anyone who likes amusing messes or the show, on the basis that you would pay less than $10 for it. It's not the worst game I could imagine paying $10 for. I've paid way more for less. But, I mean, it is a full single-player game with a full campaign that's fully voice-acted and everything, which, honestly, believe it or not, puts it above several AAA games I've played in my time. I've played some AAA games, like Soul Calibur 5. People say that the still cutscenes are bad in this. You should see the campaign in Soul Calibur 5. Jesus Christ. It's basically an audio play with some really crap pictures put over it, and you can't tell what's going on in some scenes. So at least it's better than that. And it also cost less than that game did 10 years ago. But, in saying that, the best praise I can give it is it's better than Soul Calibur 5. Which honestly is like saying, well, you're an awful person, but you're not as bad as Hitler at least. So I guess there's that. So yeah, overall, I do not seriously recommend this game. I'd only recommend it as a little curiosity to people who are curious if it ever reaches a discount point of less than $10. Otherwise, I wouldn't touch this shit. It's a fucking mess. You could probably get the same enjoyment out of it by watching somebody else's playthrough as I did playing the game. The gameplay isn't bad, but honestly, if it was cut from the game entirely, you wouldn't have lost anything. The gameplay is a barrier between the shit that anyone actually cares about, and frankly, I honestly would not mind if I did without it. So, yeah, that's Walking Dead Destinies. I'm really glad this happened.
What the fuck is this shit, man?
Professor Curious is okay.